Wow. Well, firstly, thanks all for waiting. I think that's the problem when you pick a name like Get Rich or Die Trying. My hope was that people would turn up, but I was also hoping that it being the end of the day, most of you would have gone to start drinking. But needless to say, you're all here, and I thank you so much for taking the time. What I would like to speak to you today about is how do you actually become a founder? It's a question that I get asked a lot. People always ask me, wherever I am, how did you get that big idea? How did you think about Moove? How did it happen? And it's really interesting because, as Pat mentioned, we grew up not far from one another. When I was a kid, I was really naughty. I used to sit in class, essentially, and just do everything apart from the work I was meant to do. And similar to this part of the world where you have tiger mums, in Africa, where my parents are from, we have lion mothers. And I distinctly remember one specific day, my mother comes into my classroom, realizing that I hadn't got the report card I kind of told her I had gotten, not knowing that the school also posted report cards. So the version I gave her was slightly different than the version that was posted by the school. And she walked into my maths classroom and did what any lion mother will do, call me by my full name, Ladi Delano, in front of the entire class, and then proceed to let everybody know that in Nigerian households, you get beaten when you're naughty. The reason that happened is because I've always been a dreamer. I've always dreamed. My favorite hobby is to dream and to turn those dreams into reality. But growing up, I didn't know what my dream was. I didn't know how to make the dream into a reality. And it was even more difficult considering the circumstances that I was growing up in. As the son of a migrant, a first-generation migrant myself, our parents always told us that you're allowed to dream, but not too much, and it kind of has to be our dream. And not only that, you also have to work harder than everybody else. You have to be focused, and you have to make sure that you are successful. So essentially, get rich, because by getting rich, you'll be better than we were. In addition to that, growing up around my age, the reality TV show age and MTV age, even the music I was listening to, hip-hop music, albums were coming out, get rich or die trying. So it was becoming quite clear to me that my dream was to get rich. The early part of my career, you start to think about the global financial crisis, the era of greed. What did that tell us? That told us that corporates even thought or made it acceptable to get rich, or at least die trying, and do so at the expense of others. Now, this whole concept never really sat well with me. It never really sat well with me that we just focus as entrepreneurs to try and just get rich, and to do so at the expense of others. But needless to say, at the beginning of my journey, I still attempted to find my big idea that will enable me to get rich. So I started. And as Pat mentioned, I tried everything. Sold alcohol. At one point, I sold wedding dresses. At another point, I was importing pigskins, and so on and so forth. And yes, there were a few successes, but the reality was there was a litany of failures. And in that litany of failures, I started to ask myself another question. Not so much what is the big idea, but why is it that things aren't going as well as I would like them to? Why is it that the big idea I'm searching for, I can't find? And what I came to learn is that it's not a big idea we should be looking for. It should be a problem that we are trying to solve that we should be looking for. And this was a massive realization for me, because I'd always focused on this concept of where's that big idea? Where's that big opportunity? But the reality is that solving a problem is a lot more impactful, a lot more fun, a lot more self-fulfilling, or fulfilling, to be honest. But finding that problem to solve then became the next task. And what I learned over time is the way to find that problem is really to look in yourself. Because the problem is normally within you or around you. Now, in my case, I mentioned to you that my parents were immigrants from Nigeria moving to the UK. I was a first-generation British-born Nigerian. And one of the things I started to realize is that I wasn't the first dreamer in my home. My grandfather was a dreamer because he wanted more for his kids. My mother and my father were dreamers, hence why they left Nigeria to move to the UK. The problem was their dreams, to a degree, had an element of limitation because of the background that they'd come from. So I knew that I'd come from a whole family of dreamers. And through becoming a dreamer and being a dreamer and continuing to dream, I started to realize that there are a lot of other people in the world that are also dreamers. But the difference between me and them is they don't have the ability to turn their dreams into a reality for a number of reasons. Primarily, in the case of emerging markets, maybe the opportunity education-wise, opportunity business-wise, opportunity in terms of access to capital doesn't exist. But they still have a dream. And the problem that I eventually found to solve was the ability to help those who have a dream in an emerging market to actually make their dream in a reality. And that ended up being the big idea. That ended up being the big business. That ended up being the successful one, Moove, where we focus on helping those, by providing financial services, the opportunity to turn their dream into a reality. And that was massive for us. And it's now turned into a situation where I'm not so much focused on getting rich and focused on just finding a big idea. I'm actually focused on finding a problem and helping solve that problem, and by virtue of that, being extremely impactful. So when people ask me the same question, how did you get that big idea? How did you found this business? My response now is, don't focus on the big idea. Focus on the problem. And in order to find that problem, just be comfortable with yourself. You will find the problem. The problem to solve is 99.9% either within you or right next to you. In my case, it was just looking at that concept of being a dreamer, concept of coming from an emerging market, concept of living in the UK when many of people just like me didn't have the same opportunities as I did. So the question I have for a lot of you here is, what is the problem you're going to solve? What is the problem that you believe will make a difference? Because the truth is, if all of us focus on solving a problem, then we can actually really change the world. It's quite powerful. And it's quite strange because when people always used to tell me I'd like to change the world, I always thought it was quite cliche. And I can't believe I'm just standing here telling others that it's actually possible to change the world. But the reality is that if you find that problem to solve, then we really can indeed change the world. And that's really my founder story. It's the concept of focusing on a problem, finding that problem, and in the process of solving, or at least building a business to solve for that problem, you can really change the world. Thank you very much.